real estate played a role for me to be able to claim my time and control my schedule more. And for you as an investor, just understand, what are your financial goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? If you're really trying to get, passive income, or you're trying to put your money to work, then passive investing might be a great strategy for you.
Welcome to The Conscious Investor. Let's get started. Conscious investors, welcome back. This podcast episode is well over a year overdue. That's how long it's taken for our schedules to actually work out and things like that. And so I am absolutely thrilled to share space to invite you to also join this amazing conversation with my friend, John Casmon. John, I'm so excited to share space with you here because fellow podcaster, extraordinary investor. I'm just absolutely excited. So welcome.
Julie, thank you for having me. You're right. This has been long overdue, but I'm excited to be here today and excited to talk to all of your conscious investor listeners. Let's get this thing going.
Man, we're going to. I just have to throw in there that I think it's funny. Usually I meet people in person after they're on the podcast, but it's pretty cool. Because we waited, it worked out really well. I got to meet you at the Best Ever conference. I don't have a promo code or anything like that, y'all, but make sure that you are marking your calendar for Best Ever conference, Joe Ferris's event next year. It's an absolutely extraordinary event. It'll be in Salt Lake City. So check that out because you might bump into John, you might bump into me, and so many other amazing people. I like that. I'm giving Joe's event a plug. It's that good. But John, you have a background that is really interesting because my grandpa used to work in marketing years ago before he got into real estate. He worked for PepsiCo and he was in marketing. I think that's interesting that you as well have this amazing background working for cool companies like Nike and General Motors. And I have to say, one of my favorites though that I noticed is Coors, because I just got back from Denver hiking Mount Elbert, the tallest 14er in Colorado. And at the end of the day, I won't lie, this girl had Boulder potato chips because I needed the salt and a Coors Light. I'm like, I'm in Colorado, baby. But that's in your past. So tell me a little bit, like, how did you go from corporate America and being an awesome, director of marketing to just superstar investor?
Well, first of all, shout out to your grandpa, because I also did work on Mountain Dew, which is one of the PepsiCo brands. And I did a little work on Pepsi as well. So excellent stuff there. Spent some time out there in White Plains, going out there to check out our clients, some of the work they're doing. So excellent stuff there. Great connection. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I went from corporate America doing marketing and advertising to full-time real estate. And my short story is this. I, graduated from school and got an internship working for a company in Detroit, an advertising agency in Detroit. I ended up bouncing around a little bit there after that internship. And I did a fellowship program. And through that fellowship program, General Motors was one of my clients. I moved around, went to Chicago, and they were ready to make me a full-time offer at the end of the fellowship program. And I got a phone call from GM saying, hey, the guy you were working with got promoted. They're looking to backfill his position. And your name came up. They'd love for you to come out and interview. And I said, wow, that's interesting. I had no idea that this was an option. It certainly wasn't on my career trajectory, but I ended up interviewing, getting the job. So I was working at GM. This is 2007 to 2011. And during that time, I got a chance to work with some really cool things, Final Four activations, Super Bowl, Maximum Hot 100 parties. By the way, I was like single and like 26 years old or something at the time. So it was great.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
It's fun. I'm traveling all over doing these fun, crazy things.
Corporate America, compensation, and all these really great scenes. You're having a hard knock life.
I'm doing music video shoots, hanging out with celebs.
Gosh.
It's a fun time, right? So I'm enjoying life right now. The only challenge is 2007, 2008, well, things slow down and there start to be signs that there are some financial challenges the company is going through. And I will tell you that the anxiety that was created during that time frame was something I will never forget. My peers, the way they looked at their jobs, the concern that we all had, what was going to happen, we're even going to have jobs. Was the company going to fold completely? This was a company too big to fold, right? This is a huge corporation, one of the biggest companies in America. And here we are, really facing bankruptcy. So that anxiety, I think everybody was looking for different jobs and, trying to figure out what your options were. It was a really, really trying time. And I think for me, what ultimately happened was I looked at my peers who were what we call lifers. Their plan was, I got a great job. I'm going to work this thing until I retire, until I get my gold watch. That's the plan. There is no plan B, right? That's what my 401k or, my pension's for. There's no plan B. I'm working this job till I retire. That's it. Well, many of those people got a rude awakening because they either got let go or demoted or shipped somewhere else or whatever the case may be. They had an adjustment that they were not prepared for. And I just remember thinking to myself, I don't ever want to be in that position. Again, I was young, no kids, so I could navigate some of that, but I watched the impact it had on some of my peers. And I felt great empathy for them, particularly as a gentleman who lost his job and he had worked for the company for 22 years. He was diabetic. He was, on insulin. He had no idea how he was going to get his medication. And I just remember feeling so bad for, the situation he was going through. And after thinking through that, it was like, okay, what can you do to protect yourself from this? Companies have an obligation that, quite frankly, is not you as the employee. So how do you protect yourself? And I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like a lot of other people. And I said, you know what? We got to start investing in something like real estate, because at least that way we can get some passive income. We can insulate ourselves a little bit from the challenges or the changing world of corporate America. And maybe if this happens again in the future, I've got a plan B lined up for me, ready to go. So that's what I started to do. But again, I was in Detroit at this time, and it's still 2008, 2009. So it wasn't really the best place to invest if you were a newbie. So I ended up moving to Chicago a couple of years later. And then once I got to Chicago, that's when I got more serious about real estate investing. Started investing with the duplex, ended up going to a 3-unit building, then an 8-unit building. And then I finally learned about partnering with other people, apartment syndication, and really started to scale the portfolio from there. So to date, we've partnered with others to invest in over $120 million worth of apartments. And we continue to source and look for great opportunities and working with other people today.
It is amazing that you were in your mid-20s, like you're still young. I mean, that's like the whole, you're just figuring life out in your 20s for most people, right? But to have that awakening and to have that, oh, wow, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be dependent just upon somebody else calling my shots on what my future and my retirement looks like. I had a similar aha as a public school teacher when I was up for tenure and they started handing out pink slips. And I thought I was in like this safety zone. I work for the government. I'm a teacher. They don't lay off teachers, right? And so here I am, 25. I didn't get a pink slip, but just knowing that that was an option, knowing that I did not have that security that I thought was there, and totally was a wake-up call to me.
Yeah. And my guess is your situation is probably similar to mine, where part of the reason you didn't get it was you were a cheaper employee, right? You were younger and newer. The same with me. I was an assistant ad manager at the time. And they're like, oh no, someone's still got to do the work. We're going to let go of all these highly paid individuals who maybe are not adding that same value of what their salary is. And I just sat there. I was like, well, this is good for me. But I also know at some point, if I stay here, I'm going to be on the other end of this conversation. And that's not the way to build a long-term career. I mean, because you can, one thing with marketing in particular is you absolutely can get aged out. You get to a point where, they want a young hip cat who understands, NFTs and blockchain and crypto and social and all that stuff. And a person who, grew up in radio and print, and they're like, you're a fossil, go move over there. So you have to stay current and young, and appearances matter. And it's a wild game to be in. So I also felt like there was a shelf life on how long I could be successful in that field. And, that's part of what really triggered me to say, crush it here, do what you can in your job. Do well, excel, enjoy it, but start working on your plan B.
I love that. I'm kind of picturing a little Mad Men, Don Draper situation. I don't know if you ever watched it.
Oh, of course, of course.
Yeah. I mean, like things do change for in every industry is like that. I mean, the marketing isn't really any different because the technology advances are so significant and so swift that, really, I mean, just staying agile and current is critical for everyone. Interesting. So, okay. Did you end up investing passively first, or it sounds like you just went straight to small multifamily and let me start tackling this. I'm a doer. I'm a man of action.
Well, I wish I would have known that was an option. Again, I didn't have that much money to invest at that time, but I did start with a 2-unit building. We house hacked, and that's a great way to get started. Particularly if you're a younger person, if you are renting right now, I tell everyone, if you're renting right now, the absolute best strategy for you is to find a 2 to 4 unit property, live in one unit, rent out the other units, and let those residents pay the bulk, if not all, of the mortgage. That's the best strategy to get started. So that's what we did to get going. But I really didn't know about passive investing. We heard about people flipping and maybe being like a private lender. So I kind of knew about that. If someone was flipping, maybe I could, loan money to them for them to flip. But I really didn't think about it as I could build a portfolio passively. And I also just didn't have like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in my bank account at the time. So it really wasn't going to be a feasible long-term option for me. With that said, I wish I would have known that it was an option, because as I progressed in my career, it would have served me better to invest passively, particularly as I was looking to scale. So I knew what I knew with my smaller portfolio, but as I started to scale into larger stuff, one of the mistakes that I made was I actually started to flip houses to try to generate more capital for apartment investing. And what would have been a better strategy was simply to take the capital I had, invest passively so I could learn from a more experienced operator. I could get some cash flow benefits, and then that would put me in a better position if I wanted to do my own deals and partner with others in that capacity. Instead, I tried to flip properties and try to find my own deals at the same time. And those flip projects really became a challenge where I had a partner who was supposed to be leading it. They kind of, just fell off the planet about 3 months into the project, and it just became an absolute nightmare. And then I ended up having to take over and run these flips while working a full-time job. So, trying to make sure that the contractors are on site was a challenge. I'm trying to, come to work as late as possible, sneaking in to make sure contractors are there. I'm leaving out early. I'm trying to figure out how long can I get there and get back before people notice that I'm on a long lunch break, right? I'm calling to check and see who's there. I'm trying to put cameras into the property. It's all sort of stuff, right? But it's just really difficult to manage a flip project. So I tell everyone, if you've got a demanding full-time job, instead of trying to flip or do something that's going to be really intensive and hands-on, why not invest passively? You're going to be able to learn. You'll be able to grow. You'll be able to work with someone who's competent. There's scale involved. So you'll have the money to actually hire and support people. And it makes it much easier for you as an investor so that you can actually learn kind of slowly, as opposed to having to be so hands-on and active where it could start to impact your day job.
I really appreciate that. And one of the elements that is really standing out to me in life in general right now is, how we do one thing is always amplified in situations. It's not like you magically just let's just say a lot of people value money. And they think, if I have this much money, X amount, whatever it is, then X, Y, and Z will happen. And so, but the reality is, and maybe that X, Y, and Z looks like, well, if I had more money, then I would give more to charity and I would, start a nonprofit and do all these, right? But if they're not doing it right now in the starting blocks with the little bit of money, it's not just going to somehow magically happen. And so when we apply that to, kind of what you're sharing here is we're not just going to magically go from okay, if we want that lifestyle where we're present with our family and we have time freedom, and if that's what our end game is, but we're not training ourselves on strategies to do that, it's not going to just magically happen, because we'll keep that habit of go, 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 grind, 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 stay on the hamster wheel, make more money, and just keep your hands on the assets and constantly working, instead of, okay, no, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to find the passive investment. I'm going to figure that out so I can start this lifestyle now and continue to grow and evolve with that.
Yeah. And Julie, I'm so glad you pointed that out, because as we talk about my journey, the one thing I maybe didn't amplify enough is when I looked around at my peers back when I was at GM and corporate, one of the reasons I wanted to leave was I knew that I could get kind of addicted to that. I mean, I had power. And when I was an intern, I had a creative director. And again, I'm an intern. I think I may have been on 2 plane rides in my life at that point, right? And this guy just came back from a shoot. He just shot this brand new Chevy vehicle they're launching into this great commercial, $1 million shoot, staying in nice hotels, great luxury lunches, all this stuff, right? So he's coming back, and all us interns, we're like little kids, right? Sitting around a kindergartner teacher telling us this story. And we're just, big-eyed and, oh, where'd you stay? And what was going on? And oh, man. So he noticed how excited we were, and he stopped and he said, I want you all to know something. And he pulled out his business card. He said, all of this stuff happened because of this. And he said the name of the company and the title that he held. He said, you don't want to work just so you get these perks as a title. You want to get these perks because of your name, right? Not the title, your name. And I never forgot when he said that. And when I was at GM, you'd have vendors. And again, I mentioned all the cool stuff I was doing. It never left me that wasn't happening for John Casmon. That was happening for the advertising manager of Buick or the advertising manager of GMC. It was never for John Casmon. So even when people come and they're very nice and sweet and want to take you to lunch and buy you dinner and all sorts of stuff, but it was the person in that role. I was just the person at that time. And the key was, do you want people to do those things, or you want those perks for you? And the reason I bring that up is it's easy to get addicted to those kind of things, to feel that power, to feel like that influence. And what happens is if you're not consciously thinking about the lifestyle you want to create, it's very difficult to walk away from those things. So one of the reasons I left, and I don't say this very often, but one of the reasons I left is because I wanted to separate myself from that kind of lifestyle before I got so comfortable with it that I felt I couldn't leave. A lot of my peers in that company, they didn't want to leave because of all the perks that come with it. To be able to tell people you work for this company and you've got this influence and you work in this brand, and there are a lot of perks that do come with that. And I will tell you that, and again, not just monetary, but I think we all look for purpose. We all look for definition and your title, your job title. A lot of people define themselves as that. When you meet someone new, one of the first questions after your name is going to be, well, what do you do? What do you do? And most people tell you, oh, I'm a XYZ title at this company. I'm a senior marketing manager at blah, 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 blah. And we kind of have to get away from that, because that really doesn't define who you are or what you do. So again, being conscious about that and the lifestyle you want to create and separating your purpose from the title that you have, it's something that I started to pick up on when I was working in those environments. And part of it was when we went through bankruptcy, again, some of those people who were happy to call and take me to lunch and all sorts of stuff. Well, guess what? When they knew we didn't have money, they stopped calling. So it's really interesting watching those dynamics. And I'll tell you, I left that company over 10 years ago. I have a handful of people who I still talk to from that time. Matter of fact, one of them is throwing an event. She just invited me to come out there for her event. And it just goes to show, again, that's for the name at the top, right? That's for my name, because I no longer have that title where I can feed her business or get her into a pitch. So those are the kind of things that are become really important, is just really understanding what lifestyle you want to create. And that's the other thing. I watched a senior level executive move from California to Detroit and then to Shanghai within a matter of less than 2 years. And this was someone who had, high school age children. And I just couldn't imagine what those kind of changes would be like. And at a certain point, the money can't be the only driving factor. What kind of lifestyle you're looking to create for yourself, for your family. Those are the things that matter. And values aren't really values until they cost you something. So at that point is when you really have to understand who you are, what are your values, and then make sure they line up.
Oh, that values aren't really values until they cost you. Because that is right. Even in the word values, it's like we're giving it an amount, we're giving it a value, we're assigning it something. But you're right. If it's not costing you, it really isn't significant value. Yeah. So many people That's just,
and they're opposing, and they're, listen, Julie, and they're to put this in context, right? They're opposing values. Like everyone wants to make plenty of money for their family, right? We all want to be breadwinners and take care of our family financially, right? I think most people, we're talking, this is an investing podcast. Of course we want to make money for our family, right?
Right.
Clearly. Many of us also want to be good parents, good spouses, right? Okay. So when those two things come into conflict, meaning there's a chance to go out there and do a new pitch that could generate more money, or your child has, a first baseball game or something like that. Okay. Now you've got two opposing values coming against each other. Mm-hmm. Are you going to be there for your kid's first game so you can be that, good present parent? Or you're going to go do that new business pitch because it can result in more money? I'm not saying either one is right or wrong. All I'm saying is now you have to go and prioritize your values. Now, the savvy thing is see if you can push one. You probably can't push the game, but maybe you can push the meeting. And if you can't push the meeting, okay, is there a way to make it up to the child so they know, hey, you know what? I can't make this one. I'm going to go away for this thing here. How about we do X, Y, Z, right? So there's always a balancing act, but that decision-making process, that starts to weigh your values and challenge your values. And I will tell you, when people talk about success, I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how much money you have, right? I know what my values are, and I'm going to look at, you as an individual based on my values. And again, your values can be your values. I'm not going to judge you on that. But I'm saying when I make decisions, I'm looking for people who share those same values. Don't tell me you're about family and you're about being all these things, yet that's not reflected in the actions, right? So, and again, it's not a knock on anyone else. It's not it's not a judgment on them, but your values should be reflected in your actions.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Everyone, the conscious investors, you're used to hearing me say, I couldn't agree with you more. It's so interesting. Case in point, my daughter was in her very first musical. She's 11. And I already had due diligence came up on an asset. So it's kind of like, I have to go do due diligence. That's my responsibility. But you're in your first musical. And we sat down and looked at, there were 4 performances. I'm like, okay, here's the deal. And we ended up and we discussed it. She and I discussed it together. What works here. Okay. So what ended up working out was, okay, I'm flying back in an awkward way so that I can make it and I'm not going to be there opening night, but your dad and brother will. And I end up going to the other performances. Right. Then we have the family performance, and then we have the, mom's going performance. So it's like you have representation. She probably had more representation just by nature of that, but what was interesting about that was having that dialogue and making sure, like, how does this work for you? Like, okay, sweet daughter, you're amazing. Like, let's talk about this and see where this lines up for you and if that works.
I love that, Julie. And I will say too, like,
and then it teaches them. Yeah. It teaches them how, like, they're going to have to process things like that in their life and figure it out.
And you're going to have opposing values come into conflict. So you're going to have to navigate that, right? And I think that's a great way to do that. And at the end of the day, we want our children to know that they're seen, they're loved, they're respected, they're supported. And just because I'm not there at this specific moment doesn't mean that's the case. And it also changes by family. I mean, for us, like, that's more of my role than my wife's role. Like, she's very supportive, but like, it depends on how you grew up. Like, I grew up where I looked in the stands and there was very rarely a parent there, they just weren't there. So for me, it's a deeper theme. Like, my wife doesn't look at it that way. I do. And I got 2 boys. So I'm like, hey, when you turn around, dad's there. That's it. Like, that's the priority. Like, I coach my kid. I'm like, I didn't want to coach, but here I am coaching his team. Right. So it's one of those things where you have to just navigate that situation and have those conversations. But I'll tell you, there's a woman I know who is a very prominent speaker, probably call her a celebrity speaker at this point. And I remember she told me at the time, at least, she spent about 250 days of the year on the road, and she's a single mother. And I asked her, well, how do you do that? You've got a teenage son, you're on the road. most of the time. And part of what she did was she talked about making the time she had with her son very valuable. So they would sit down together. They would talk about, what happened while they were gone. They would talk about what's going on in his life, what challenges they have, but she made sure that she was present in those moments and that she was always accessible for him. So the point is again, whether you're physically there, you could physically be there and still not be present. So I think that's
most often the case these days.
Exactly. So
check the box. I'm here.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? And it's something where for you as an individual, it just comes back to what are your priorities? What are you really trying to get out of it? And then just make sure you're doing that and just be honest with yourself. And if there's room for improvement, which usually there is, just take an assessment so you can get better.
I love it. And there's always that transformation. And the longer we go through life and we are transforming and we're learning new information, new feedback, new experiences, they all inform us on how we're evolving on this path. And so just being open and pliable to that and saying, I know my vision, my larger vision. By the way, I'm onto this whole thing where I'm kind of done with goals because they're such a final destination point, but just really latching onto the larger vision. Because think about our vision expands and grows, which makes it really exciting. And it's so fun to just, continue into a vision versus goals where it's just, oh, I'm going to get here and it's going to be done, next. To me, it's a significance. And so as you're traveling in life towards that greater vision that you have, it makes it far easier to see some of those redirects that we can do that better prepare us.
Yeah. And I think just to bring it back to real estate investing, it's understanding the role this plays in that journey, right? So for me, it wasn't like, oh, I want to have this XYZ portfolio. Don't care, right? It was a matter of how do I get this lifestyle? And when I was in marketing, part of the challenge was it's pretty demanding. And my wife also had a pretty demanding job. So, on the road, we're tag teaming. She's out. I mean, there were days where literally we both were traveling the same day, but our schedules normally just lined up where somebody could be there to get the kids. But I might, leave out Thursday morning for a flight. So I would book a midday flight so I can get the kids to preschool. But I'm cutting out that day and she wasn't even there in the city, but she's going to get there by say 3:00. But if something ever happened to her flight, I'm like, oh, no one's there to pick up my kids, right? But she'd get in at 3, be able to get the kids. So we're literally at a point where neither one of us are even in the city for a few hours and we're just going back and forth. So for me, it was always a matter of, hey, I've got to get to a point where I can control my time. Because as long as I'm in this marketing role, I can't control my time. And I could have took a job where it's like, more of a desk job, 9 to 5 type thing. But my job, I never knew. We were doing events all over the country. We were doing shoots. I had meetings with clients in New York, White Plains, down in, Bacardi in Miami. So I'm traveling a lot for some of these meetings. So it was kind of hard to know where I was actually going to be. So real estate played a role for me to be able to claim my time and control my schedule more. And for you as an investor, just understand, what are your financial goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? If you're really trying to get, passive income, or you're trying to put your money to work, then passive investing might be a great strategy for you. I think one thing that everyone should think about is no matter what your job is, you cannot pass along your job to your children. You can't say, hey, I've got this doctorate degree. I'm going to give this to my son so you can start on third base. It just doesn't work that way, right? So all you have are assets. You have the cash, you have assets, you have investments. So you really want to take the money you're making from this day job, money you're grinding away to get. How are you putting that money to work so you have something to show for the 20, 30, 40, whatever years of work that you've done? Because it won't be just the salary. It's going to be the cash you saved, the investments you've made, the assets you've acquired. That's what you're going to have to show for the hours you put in. And that's why it's really important to invest so you can have some passive income. You have assets to live off of. You have assets to pass along to your children. And that's one of the first things you should be thinking about is, how am I building this portfolio? And as we're seeing with inflation at all-time record highs, if you're just putting that in a savings account, or even if you're only putting it into a 401k, it's not going to be enough. You're going to be either working a longer time, or you're simply not going to have what you thought you were going to have when it comes to retirement.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm just always in awe. You communicate these things with such ease that it's just absolutely wonderful. I'm just sitting here in awe, like, thank you. All of just articulated so well, but I particularly I wrote it down, you can't pass your job down to your children. And sometimes we lose sight of that. And what are we really passing down? And having something to show for it is significant. Yeah. Having clarity for where you're going in life is critical. And then you can make the best decisions and enjoy it and find the joy and the wonder of the entire journey.
Yeah, I think that's critical. Enjoy it. If you love your job, again, I'm not saying some people get so big on the entrepreneurship journey and say, oh, you need to leave. No, if you love your job, work that job. All I'm saying is the money you're making from that, make sure you're putting it somewhere so that you have something to show for all that hard work. Mm-hmm. That's it.
I love it. Gosh, John, this is an absolute just mic drop session. That's all I can say. I'm like, mic drop, mic drop, mic drop. I mean, I'm over here scratching down all sorts of notes and I appreciate it so much. I always ask people, what is something that they are consciously pursuing right now, as you are just being super intentional about. What is that for you?
There are a few things, we look at our business often, and I want to say business in the sense of we run it like a business, treat it like a business. We're figuring out how to reinvest in the business. What roles do we need to get better at? Can we hire this out? Do we need more training? All that kind of stuff. I have coaches that I work with. So talking to my coaches, taking a look at what other people are doing and just really learning. So always really looking at our business, try to learn and get a little bit better at that. And then personally, just putting myself in a position to be a better version of myself. And that starts with mental clarity. That starts with health. I mean, kind of before we hit record, we were talking a lot about, working out and how do you prepare for that? And for me, it's great because I'm starting to reach kind of a next level of awareness. And what I mean by that is you start by just doing it, right? 90% of it is just showing up. Just show up and go to the gym. Before you sit there and look at diets and exercise plans, all that stuff, just get your butt to the gym 3 times a week. All right. Let's just start with that. Let's do that for a couple months straight. Okay. Let's commit to that. And then we can say, okay, I'm showing up. Now, how do I maximize my time while I'm here? How do I change my diet so I can get better? And I think with investing, it's the same thing. You don't have to overthink it. Just show up, just invest. Just start to invest, get something going, save some money, set it aside, put it in some investments. As you're doing that and learning more and listening to podcasts like this and listening to the Conscious Investor Show, now you can start to really refine your approach. Okay, you know what? I was investing in stocks and mutual funds and bonds. Now I want to get into real estate. Okay, now you're in real estate. Great. Now I want to get into more syndications. I want to figure out how I can partner with other people and be able to scale and not be reliant upon what I've got in my own bank account. Okay, great. Now you want to get better at finding deals or figuring out ways to structure deals. So you will get better and better, but it starts with showing up. And everything is really just a matter of little improvements. And if you show up, you can start to improve. But if you sit there and you think about, I need to eat X amount of, grams of protein and X amount of grams of carbs, and that's what I'm going to do. And you just read about it, but you actually never do it. You never show up and you're sitting there and you're trying to build this master plan. You're not going to see results. So just show up, do it. And it's much easier to correct and edit than it is to start from scratch. So just show up and do it. And then you can make adjustments to some of the habits that you're starting to form. So for me, I think from a business standpoint, we've been doing our podcast over 400 plus episodes. We're trying to make adjustments to it. We want to continue to grow. But if I sat there and thought to myself, well, how do I make the best podcast? I'd probably still be waiting to launch it. Right. Because you probably still would be thinking about, well, I need to do this, or I need to do that, or I need to do this. If I'm waiting to talk to investors. Okay, well, I need to make a list, or I need to talk to this guy, or I need to do this first before I can start talking to people. It's going to take you forever to get started. So showing up, taking action, and then just refining it. What can we do better? And it's much easier to take action on making an edit to something you're doing already than to get started. So use that momentum to just start. Just do it. Just start. And then you can say, okay, how do I make that a little bit better? You know what? This is taking up a lot of my time. Let me figure out if I can get X, Y, Z or someone else to help with that part of it. It's much easier to make those improvements once you get started.
It's absolutely true. This podcast, The Conscious Investor, is a testimony to that directly. I just thought, I'm just going to get started. And I'm not going to figure anything out until I get started. It's all going to be in my mind, but I won't actually know. I won't have experienced that. And same with investing. We started out as passive investors. We had single family, but as we wanted to go into the multifamily space, it's like, let's get started. And let's start by the fastest way for us to get started is to invest passively, because then we can learn, just as you were describing earlier in the show. Now we can learn this whole process, on the sidelines, but our money's in the game and we can see what's going on and just gain and grow from there. Yeah. And
you build a real confidence, right? Because you're actually investing in these large deals, right? It's not something you heard me and Julie talk about on the show, right? It's not something you read in a book or something you read on Bigger Pockets. You've actually invested in one of these deals. And then you learn from experience. What kind of emotions were you going through? What kind of questions did you have? What made you feel good and comfortable? What gave you some concerns and hesitation? How can you adjust that, if you were to do a deal? And it's much easier to talk to other people about it, because now you can just share what you're doing. Hey, I just invested in this deal. It's going pretty well. I'm going to be looking to do more deals like this. If you're interested in learning more, or if you want me to share these opportunities with you when I come across them, let me know. I'm happy to do that. That's a much easier conversation than, hey, I'm looking to get into apartment syndication. Do you want to invest in my deal?
Yeah, right. It is a very different conversation. Wow. Yeah. And that was another reason I thought there's no credibility in asking people for money if you haven't done it. I spent an entire year blazing the trail ahead. I'm like, well, I need to experience this. I want to experience passive investing. I want to roll my money into a self-directed fund. I want to, let me experience all this instead of saying, this is what you can do. Let me say, this is what I've done. This is my experience with that. It's really great.
I love it. Love it completely.
I do too. John, you're amazing. I just value you so much, and you bring so much to the community. Thank you. That's all I can say. I'm like, conscious investors are hearing it. They're like, what the heck? Julie's out of words? When does that ever happen? That happens very rarely. It's just when you're with someone you're so articulate, but, you're giving so much substance and form to these really important concepts that change the trajectory of life for people. And I love it when I have, guests like you who are able to articulate things that empower conscious investors to take their next step. It might be the first step. It might just be hopping on the calendar with John or with myself, or both of us, like, no, I just need to make that first step. I'm going to make a phone call, or maybe it's that I'm going to look at the deal. Maybe that's your first step, or maybe your first step is I'm going to make sure my funds are ready to be wired. Okay, now I'm really ready. And maybe your step right now is I'm going into my 15th passive investment, right? But the point is we're always continually taking the next step.
And always looking to grow. And I think that's the goal of this, right? Is we're all looking to grow. And there's a lot of information out there. So take that step, as you said, whether you are looking to invest, set up a call with Julie or myself. And the thing that's great is you can find people you connect with and you vibe with. And that's cool. Find somebody who you feel comfortable talking to. And a conversation doesn't mean a commitment. So feel free to talk to people and learn more about them and how they think and, why they do things the way they do things. And you can go from there. And I will tell you, if people are looking at deals, I think a great way to get more comfortable is to look at a deal. So we actually have a sample deal package on our website, and it's really for active or passive investors. If you are interested in investing passively, but maybe some of these terms are confusing, or you just haven't seen the way deals are presented or what some of these things should look like, it's a great way to start wrapping your head around this. So when you do start looking at real opportunities, this is somewhat familiar. You're starting to see some of these things again, right? You're starting to see, what a 5-year return trajectory looks like. But again, I would implore you to check that out. And then if you're an active investor, if you want to get a sense of what kind of information should I communicate with investors, this gives you a sense of, hey, here's some things you probably want to include in whatever presentation you're doing. So if you want to see that, you can go to casmoncapital.com/sample deal, and you'll also get added to our newsletter. We send out a once every other week email. We try to keep it filled with tips. We don't do a lot of spammy type stuff. So hopefully you enjoy that. But if you want to check that out, just go to casmoncapital.com/sample deal.
And you also have a very amazing podcast that you've recently rebranded.
We did. So the show is called Multifamily Insights and it's originally called Target Market Insights. And we did rebrand. And for us, it just came down to the content we were covering initially was really focused on how to find the best places to invest. And we felt that we had evolved from just market research to marketing and multifamily holistically. So that's why we rebranded. So this is for anybody who's looking to build a business out of multifamily investing, building their own portfolio, whether you want to be a syndicator and raise millions of dollars for deals, or you just want to park, the $50K you have in your account. Check out the podcast, great insights of what to look for, industry information on the markets, how to build a brand, all that kind of stuff. So that's available anywhere you listen to this. You can check out Multifamily Insights.
Love it. Thank you so much, John, for joining me on The Conscious Investor. It's been absolutely pure joy.
Julie, thank you for having me. I'm glad we finally did this after such a long time. Thanks for having me on. I know, right?
And to all you amazing conscious investors, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. I just know the most extraordinary people, and I am so, so blessed that they will contribute their time to, provide all sorts of insights for you. So if, leave an honest rating and review for the show, that way the show grows, it reaches other people so that they can grow and learn and evolve in their investing and life. Well, also, please remember, adventure belongs on the trail, not in your investing and not in your personal life. So if you need help and support with the investing, reach out. Make sure you schedule a call so we can discuss apartment investing. And if you need some help just activating your potential and maxing out on the purpose that you have in life, then make sure you schedule a coaching session with me so that we can, help you level up. Whole and complete lives are powerful. And until next time, live big, love bigger. What's the big deal about investing in apartments? Why is it better than investing in a slew of single-family homes? I've compiled a lot of information on why investing in a multifamily, also known as apartments, will help you reach your investment goals. Head over to 3keysinvestments.com and download the Why Invest in Multifamily guide today.